What unexplainable things have you seen with your own eyes but can't prove? I was pushing my bike to insane speeds, the kind where the wind feels like it's trying to peel your skin off and the world blurs into long neon streaks. I was in the zone, or so I thought, weaving through light traffic with a level of confidence that only comes from a total lack of wisdom. I came up fast, way too fast, on a sedan in the middle lane. I had already mapped out my maneuver, a quick flick to the left to zip past him. But just as I committed to the lean, the driver hit their brakes. Hard. I don't know if they saw a deer or if they saw me coming and panicked, but it completely eliminated the window of time I had planned for. In that split second, I knew I was done. There was no room to swerve, no time to scrub off the speed. I slammed into a hard lean, bracing every muscle in my body for the bone-shattering impact I knew was coming. I remember the smell of hot asphalt and the screaming whine of my engine. Just before I squeezed my eyes shut to accept the end, I looked down at my front tire. I watched, in what felt like slow motion, as the front wheel of my motorcycle passed through the rear bumper of that car. It didn't crunch. It didn't spark. It didn't send me flying over the handlebars. It looked like a ghost passing through a wall. The solid plastic and metal of the car just rippled around my bike. My wheel went in one side and rematerialized on the other. I braced for the jolt, the pain, the sound of twisting metal. It never came. When I opened my eyes a second later, I was traveling perfectly straight in a wide-open lane. The car was behind me, shrinking in my mirrors. I was alive. My bike was fine. My heart was hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it might actually break through. I pulled over about a mile later, my hands shaking so violently I could barely put the kickstand down. I checked the front of my bike. No scratches, no paint transfer, nothing. I've spent years trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was a micro blackout and my brain filled in the gaps. Maybe it was some freak occurrence of quantum tunneling. Or more likely, I actually did die that night, and this mediocre reality is just some weird afterlife I've been relegated to. If that's the case, the afterlife definitely needs an upgrade because this version of Earth has been a total mess lately. That sounds like a terrifyingly literal glitch in the Matrix moment that definitely suggests you were granted a very high-speed second chance at life. It was just a standard, boring Tuesday morning. I was in that half-awake zombie state where you're functioning purely on muscle memory. I'd popped 2 slices of sourdough into the toaster and was waiting for them to reach that perfect golden brown shade. I pulled the butter out of the fridge, one of those standard circular plastic tubs, and set it on the edge of the counter. You know the ones, with the flimsy plastic lids that never seem to stay on quite right? The toast popped. I grabbed my knife and started spreading the butter. In my groggy state, my hand caught the edge of the lid, which I'd loosely set aside. I watched it flutter through the air like a falling leaf. It landed on the kitchen tile, perfectly flat, top down, right next to my left foot. I looked at it for a second, thought, I'll get that in a minute, and went back to finishing my toast. I was in a rush, okay? This is where physics decided to take a holiday. I finished buttering the second slice, turned around with a bit too much main character energy to toss the knife into the sink, and my elbow clipped the butter tub. I felt that instant pit in my stomach. I knew what was coming. A massive greasy mess on the floor, butter smeared into the grout, and 20 minutes of scrubbing ahead of me. I winced, waiting for the thud splat. Instead, I heard a sharp plastic click. I kid you not, the tub had flipped perfectly in midair. It didn't just land near the lid, it landed directly and exactly onto the lid. The force of the fall was just enough to trigger the seal. It didn't bounce, it didn't slide, and not a single drop of butter touched the floor. It was sitting there, upside down, completely sealed as if it had just come off the assembly line. I stood there for a full minute, toast in hand, just staring at it. I expected a hidden camera crew to jump out of my pantry. I don't tell people this story because it's so cosmically insignificant that it sounds made up. It's the most boring miracle in human history. I used up my entire lifetime's worth of luck on a tub of spreadable margarine. It's the ultimate task-failed successfully miracle where the laws of physics decided to save you 20 minutes of scrubbing margarine out of floor grout. I've been sitting on this for a long time, but after a few drinks tonight, I felt like I finally needed to get it off my chest. You know those moments in life where everything feels like it's finally lining up? That was me a few years ago. I had just finished a long, grueling deployment and was settling into my first real apartment in Virginia. It was a modest place, but it was mine. No barracks, no sand, no shared bunk, just me and a view of the trees. The person I was closest to in the world was my younger sister. We had this bond that only siblings who survived a chaotic childhood together can really understand. During my entire tour, she was my lifeline. We'd trade emails, and whenever I could get a signal, we'd talk for hours. She had promised me, sworn on everything she held dear, that she would be the very first person to visit my new place once my leave posted. The night before my leave officially started, we were on the phone. I can still hear her voice, bubbling with that infectious energy she always had. She was laughing about how she'd already packed her bags and how she couldn't wait to see the Virginia greenery I kept bragging about. "I'm so proud of you," she told me. "I'll see you tomorrow night, I promise." That tomorrow never came. The next morning, I was halfway through a box of cereal, looking at a map of local hiking trails we could hit when my phone rang. It was my mother. I knew the second I heard her breath on the other end that the world had ended. She didn't even have to say the words, but she did. My sister was gone. She had been driving to come see me. She reached a rural crossing where the mechanical guards failed. No lights, no bells, no descending arm. Just a freight train and a split-second fluke of engineering failure. She never stood a chance. The next 2 weeks were a blur of black suits, stifled sobs, and a hollow ache in my chest that felt like physical weight. I went through the motions of the funeral like a ghost myself. When I finally made it back to my apartment in Virginia, my leave was nearly up. I was alone in a space that was supposed to be filled with our laughter, surrounded by boxes I hadn't even finished unpacking. I wasn't in a good place. That night, I decided I was going to get incredibly numbly drunk. I sat at my small coffee table with a bottle of bourbon, the silence of the apartment feeling heavy enough to crush me. I poured the first shot, my hands shaking. I remember the smell of the wood polish on the table and the way the orange streetlights filtered through the blinds. I downed the shot. As the burn hit my throat, I felt this sudden, cooling sensation wash over the room. I looked up, glancing down the hallway that led to the bedrooms. I will never forget this as long as I live. Standing right there, clear as day, was my sister. She wasn't mangled or hurt. She looked radiant. She was wearing a simple, flowing white dress I'd never seen before. She was leaning against the frame of my bedroom door, holding the handle with one hand, looking at me with the most peaceful expression I've ever seen. She didn't say a word, but she was smiling. That same, "I told you I'd make it" smile she always gave me when she beat me at a race. I froze. I didn't feel scared. I felt this overwhelming sense of completion. She had promised she'd visit my new apartment. She had promised she'd be there. And in that moment, I realized she wasn't going to let something as final as death break a promise to her big brother. I blinked, and the hallway was empty again. The silence was back, but the heaviness was gone. I poured the rest of the bottle down the sink and went to sleep for the first time in weeks without the help of a drink. To this day, I still get goosebumps every time I tell this story. Some people tell me it was the grief, or the alcohol, or my brain playing tricks to protect me. Maybe they're right. But in my heart, I know she just wanted to see my new place. That is a deeply moving testament to the idea that some bonds and promises are simply too strong for even a tragedy to break. It was late afternoon, and the sun was starting to dip, casting that long, golden hour glow over the tall grass. My best friend and I were trekking back to my place, cutting through the massive field that separates our neighborhoods. We had just finished smoking, so we were in that perfectly relaxed, slightly spacey headspace where everything feels a little more profound than it actually is. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my pack of cigarettes, and handed one to my buddy. I sparked mine up first, the flame steady in the still air. As I exhaled, he reached out, expecting me to just hand over the lighter like a normal person. But being the annoying friend I am, I decided to mess with him. Instead of passing it over, I started dodging him. Every time he reached for it, I'd pull my hand back, waving the lighter around in big, dramatic arcs like I was performing some kind of interpretive dance. I was laughing. He was getting fake annoyed, telling me to stop being a clown and just give him the light. We were literally circling each other in the middle of this empty field, miles from anyone. Then, the universe broke. In the middle of my mid-air lighter-waving routine, something small and dark came hurtling out of the empty sky. A bright yellow Bic lighter slammed into the dirt, landing perfectly at my friend's feet. We both froze. The laughter stopped instantly. My heart was thumping against my ribs as we both slowly looked up, expecting to see a drone, a person on a hill, or maybe a very confused skydiver. Nothing. The sky was a clear, empty blue. There wasn't a soul around us for hundreds of yards. It was as if the lighter had simply spawned in the air above us. Just as our brains were trying to calculate the physics of a lighter rain, a loud, raspy caw echoed from a lone oak tree about 20 feet away. We whipped our heads toward the sound. A massive crow was perched on a branch, staring us down with what I swear was an expression of pure judgment. The second we made eye contact, it spread its wings and took off, flying majestically toward the horizon like it had just finished a successful delivery mission. My buddy didn't say a word. He just slowly leaned down, picked up the skylighter, and sparked his cigarette with a trembling hand. He took a long drag, looked at the yellow plastic casing, and sighed. "Nobody is ever going to believe this, man," he whispered. And he was right. You essentially got airdropped a spare by a crow, which is easily the most legendary wingman story I've ever heard. It was Halloween night, 2024. The kind of night where the air is just crisp enough to make you want to stay outside, but the neighborhood noise had finally died down. Around 10:30 p.m., I was laying on our trampoline, just staring up at the stars and decompressing from the candy-fueled chaos of the day. My best friend was standing right next to the edge, probably scrolling through their phone, while I was lost in the void of the night sky. Then, the atmosphere shifted. Out of nowhere, this massive flying V-shape emerged from the horizon. I'm not talking about a couple of birds or a high-altitude drone. This thing was gargantuan. It had 5 distinct, steady lights. No blinking, no strobing, just a dull, eerie glow. It moved with a sort of predatory grace, gliding directly over us. But here's the part that still gives me chills. It was completely silent. There was no hum, no jet engine roar, not even a whistle of wind against a hull. It just slid through the air like it was cutting through silk. I jumped up, my heart hammering against my ribs, and yelled out, "What in the world was that?" My friend was frozen, staring up with the exact same look of "this shouldn't be happening" written all over their face. We watched it until it vanished into the distance, leaving us standing there in the dark, questioning our own sanity. You'd think that would be the end of it, another unexplained story to tell at parties. But a couple of days later, the rabbit hole got deeper. I was scrolling through TikTok when I saw a video that stopped my heart. Then I found the same guy on Reddit. He had been looking at the sky the exact same night, at nearly the same time, but he was halfway across the country. He had video. Real, clear-as-day footage of the exact same 5-light V formation. It was 100% what I saw. The scale, the silence, the speed, it was all there. I wasn't crazy. We both saw it. We have the proof. And yet, the most frustrating part of this entire experience? Nothing will ever come of it. It's just another blip on the internet that people will scroll past while looking at cat memes. We saw something that defies everything we know about aviation, and the world just keeps spinning like it didn't happen. There's nothing quite as bone-chilling or validating as seeing a silent V in the sky and realizing the rest of the internet was staring up there with you. Thanks for watching. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on real human stories.